So the internet's mad about a chart that says how much rent you should pay based on how much money you make. And you might have seen it floating around already. Don't wait for it. I don't have it. According to the chart or whatever meme that was, if you make 30,000 a year, your rent should be around 750 a month. If you make 40,000 a year, it should be about 1,000. 50,000, 1,250. If you make it six figures, congratulations, you can afford a $2,500 rent for a month, right? And when I saw this chart, I kind of laughed because I was like, well, way harder than I should have. It's not because the math is wrong, but like that math is actually reasonable. And the problem with the chart is that, it assumes that reality still works and it's still reasonable, like it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. At some point we started confusing financial advice with actual living conditions. And this chart, that again I don't have, assumes you have choices. It assumes affordable housing exists where you live. It assumes your income is stable. It assumes life behaves, on its own. It assumes you can pick a housing option that fits in 30% of your income and move on with your day. But like, that's a lot of assumptions. And you know what they say about assumptions. It makes an ass out of you and me, And under that post, there were about thousands of people sharing their actual situations. People making less than 40K a year, paying over $2,000 a month in rent, and people spending half their income to keep a roof over their heads. But like, all to speak about this chart, that's not really what interested me. What interested me the most was the reaction that it gave or that it provoked from people. People are saying they're making it despite working full-time jobs. And, what fascinated me wasn't the numbers again. It was the reaction. The replies immediately turned into, that's impossible. You got to have roommates. You must have government help. You must be doing, something wrong. It's like people refuse to process the idea that somebody is working, paying bills, and still struggling. But I'm arguing, that maybe they don't even refuse to believe it. It's just, so unbelievable that the surefire way to have a house, a home, and everything else is kind of not working largely. In fact, like 60% of Americans, over 60% of Americans are kind of feeling the effects of this right now. And that number is kind of rising like every day, and that's, I guess that's the most revealing part of the whole conversation. Not the rent prices, not the wages, but the disbelief that people are going through. Some people have been like so disconnected from how Americans are living today, despite living in America today, that these stories just sound fake. It sounds dramatic, made up. There has to be a catch. There has to be a bad decision somewhere, a budgeting problem, a spending issue, a lack of discipline. And if there isn't, then we have to confront an uncomfortable possibility that a lot of people aren't failing the system, but the system failed these people. And that's just the story for most Americans nowadays. The advice always sounds simple from the outside. When you hear one of your people struggling or somebody's going through it, it's like, oh, just move, just pick up and go. Go get a cheaper apartment, sublease that. Relocate somewhere affordable. I mean, why don't you just get a better job? Have you applied to anywhere else? And it's like, yeah, these are legit solutions. Like, I get it. That's what I would like for it to work, but that's not working. Like, the way people talk about these choices makes it sound like you can just move, you can just relocate, you can just get a better job, you can just work more hours. But if the boss is capping me at part-time positions, when I'm supposed to be getting 40 hours worth of pay, but they're only letting me work 37, 38, I've even seen 39 hours max, I'm unable to make more money from that. They won't give me more hours. I can't relocate because moving is not free. It's expensive. It's just like every time somebody says that move, it tells me that they've never tried to do so while they were broke. It just doesn't sound like it to me, because moving costs money. Like I said, first month's rent costs money. Security deposit costs money. Application fees cost money. Utility transfers, from transferring your electricity from your old apartment to your new apartment, costs money. Moving trucks costs money. Take time off work costs money. Packing costs money. Like, even when you are already broke, you still have all of these struggles to go through, and you still have to pay your bills. Your bills just kind of don't stop when you think it's like, all right, I need to chill out with that. Like, no, like you still have to take care of those responsibilities. None of that's stopped, none of that's changed. And your people like tell you to move, but like, where's this money for moving coming from for all these expenses we just listed? I don't have a secret emergency fund waiting for the best time to act. And I know that most of us don't as Americans. As again, 60% of us are living without enough money to cover a $500 emergency, as we all are aware, and are probably living. The same thing happens with just get a better job advice, though. If people struggling never considered earning more money before, or as if people struggling never considered to earn more money. But what people fail to understand is that effort and the capacity are just two different things. Capacity being the largest amount that someone can take, while effort is the amount of work one puts into an activity. A lot of people aren't struggling because they haven't tried hard enough. They're struggling because they already are operating at full capacity. They're already working 40 hours a week, sometimes 50, sometimes 60. They're already picking up overtime, already doing side gigs, already selling things online, already donating plasma, just exhausting every available option just to stay afloat. And that's what gets lost whenever these conversations kind of come up. We act like poor people are waiting for financial enlightenment, when the reality is people are working themselves into the ground. And our current culture that tells people that hard work solves everything. So when someone works hard and still struggles, we assume that they messed up, but we never stop to ask whether the math itself has changed or was it correct in the first place. Because, like, here's what it is. The people in those comment sections aren't rare cases. Like I was saying, or kind of alluding to this whole time, they're people like you and me. They are exceptions. They're not outliers that slip through the cracks. They're regular working Americans. That's why so many people immediately recognize themselves in the stories that were shared about how hard rent has become to pay. They know what it feels like to watch a paycheck hit their account and then immediately disappear. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, childcare, gas, phone bill, internet, medical expenses, student loans. By the time like the necessities are covered, there's literally nothing left in most cases. And then life happens. Your tire blows out. Boom. Your transmission fails. Boom. Your kid gets sick. A medical bill pulls up and you didn't see that coming. An appliance breaks and you don't have $500 to get your fridge fixed, because the appliance repairman is going to gouge you no matter what. And then, the entire budget collapses. Like, just like that is gone. Not because somebody bought too many coffees or they, financed a luxury car or they don't understand budgeting, but because there was never any margin of error to begin with. Everything was razor thin from jump. And we can kind of see that that's what these rent charts are trying to address when you strip away like all the percentages. They're talking about the margin, about having enough breathing room in your finances to survive normal life events, the ability to save, to recover, to find an emergency or to handle an emergency without your entire, budget falling apart. And for a growing number of people, that margin just doesn't exist anymore, or it never really existed to begin with. So when people look at a chart and say rent should only be 30% of your income, they're not wrong. I wish it was only 30% of my income, and in a perfect world, that's where it should be. The problem is that millions of people don't live in a perfect world. They are living in a reality where rent has increased faster than wages, housing shortages escalate prices, moving simply isn't affordable, and one unexpected expense can wipe out an entire month of progress, maybe most likely 2 months of progress. The conversation itself shouldn't be about whether people should spend $800 a month on rent. Most people would love to spend $800 a month on rent. I would. The real question is where exactly, they're supposed to find it. The conversation shouldn't be whether people need to budget better, because we can all afford to budget a bit better. I know I can. But the conversation should be whether wages have kept pace with the actual cost of existing. And the conversation shouldn't be why so many people are living like this. The conversation should really be, why are we still shocked that people are living like this? We've made no changes to anything. It's the same thing that our parents have been under, and we're still shocked that the same system isn't working anymore when that system has expired a long time ago, honestly. The reality is that millions of Americans aren't thriving right now, obviously, but we're surviving. They're working, they're sacrificing, making compromises, everything that we need to do, and many of us aren't even staying above water. Every time someone shares that reality online, people react like it's new information, but this is just some rare phenomenon. It's not a out of the box occurrence. The average person is keeping industries running while they struggle to afford to take part in the economy that they work for. That's it. And honestly, that's just a bigger conversation that we need to have outside of rent. Rent's a symptom of it. All these expenses are a symptom of it. But the conversation needs to be, we're working for a dead industry. We're working for a corpse as workers. and you can't eat off a corpse, the meat's deceased, or whatever substance you would get from that is severely diminished. But I've been, talking for a minute. Thanks for coming to the channel. Like and subscribe to SideQuest Thinking, and then I'll see you next time.